I didn't realize how much work it takes to be a leader. I think it just looked to me like, oh, you're in lots of meetings and maybe you have a fancy title and you get to be part of the cool conversations and travel. And like, it's less glamorous, honestly, than I thought it was going to be. And it's really takes a lot of intentionality.
Welcome to the official CultureCon podcast, where we explore how work actually works.
We're your hosts, Zach Blumenfeld
and Nick Lombardino.
Whether you're leading a team, shaping culture, or just passionate about making work more meaningful, you're in the right place.
Each episode will bring you stories, insights, and bold ideas from people who are building better workplaces and better work experiences.
The official CultureCon podcast starts now. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CultureCon podcast. Today, we're joined by Kate Zappitelli from Karrikins Group. Kate is a principal at Karrikins Group and chair of the Alignment Institute, where she helps leaders and teams move beyond agreement and into real alignment through clarity, connection, commitment, and courage. Over the years, Kate has helped leaders navigate transformation, strengthen partnership, and build teams that not only deliver results, but enjoy working together while they do it. She's also someone with a fascinating background that blends executive coaching, community leadership, theater-based experiences, and even Reiki practice. Kate, we're so glad you're here. Welcome to the show.
Woo!
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Kate, you've seen what happens when leaders pull in different directions. So what pulled you towards alignment work? And when did you realize that alignment is actually like its own leadership capability?
My background is in higher education. So I actually worked for New York University, the University of Colorado, at Denver and Boulder, and the Anschutz Medical Campus. So I had a whole career in higher ed and was working with senior leaders in that space. So folks with PhDs and MDs. And then you had an opportunity to move it to Karrikins Group 8 years ago. And so it was my first experience working as a consultant, working in leadership consulting specifically, working in the private sector. So it was quite a big learning curve for me. And what I realized, one, is that the folks who have PhDs and MDs are quite similar to the folks who have or CEOs and presidents. So there's a very similar personality type, I think, at the senior level, which was helpful. And then the work I did in higher education was around special projects and chief of staff types of roles. And so being a consultant is actually quite similar there. But getting into leadership consulting, and specifically at Karrikins Group, we have a very specific methodology that our CEO, Julie Williamson, has developed. And so for me, the foundational concept we have around the difference between agreement and alignment was when I realized that this is accessible, important work to be doing. And what you called it, a leadership discipline, I think is exactly right. That it's very easy to agree. We want to, personally, we want to get healthy. I have a puppy. I want to train my puppy. It sounds easy to agree. And to actually move into alignment requires a very different level of intentionality, a growth mindset, being in conversations that may feel very uncomfortable, but that it requires that extra step, as you can't just stay in agreement. You have to move into alignment. And that it's not like, oh, yay, I checked the box and now I'm in alignment. It's like, no, every day I get to check in with myself and say, where am I still in the failure gap? Where am I still just agreeing that things are a good idea? And I haven't changed the way that I'm showing up to move into alignment. So getting to see leadership teams practice that and build that muscle, and then recognize it is just like, weightlifting. You have to do it consistently to get the results that you want. That is what helped me see that this is a very important leadership discipline and requires a lot of intentionality.
Let's stick there on alignment for a second, because one thing that stood out to me in your bio, it said the idea that alignment requires the courage to say what others are thinking, but not yet saying. And I really like that. And I'm curious from your perspective, like, what are leaders avoiding today that they probably need to be talking about more openly?
One of the things I've noticed that pretty much spans every single leadership team I've worked with is the side conversations. That often there is a smaller group within the leadership team who actually is making decisions. and that those conversations happen before the meeting, they happen after the meeting. Honestly, in the virtual world, they happen through text messages and Slack messages, but like that like side conversation habit definitely gets in the leadership team's way of being in alignment and sets the team up for, sort of the in group and then the out group within the group. And that I think makes it really hard. That I think is one is that people avoid naming that we have a side conversation habit or challenge and we need to shift that. I think also there's a things around positional power that make it really hard to name because if you're not the person with positional power who has a lot of self-awareness to say those things, it's harder for your team to say them. So I'll share an example. My first joined Karrikins Group, we worked for a private company and so privately owned, and the president, the owner, had a very consistent habit of interrupting his team members, but nobody wanted to say that to him. Like, you keep interrupting us, and it makes it really hard to have conversations with you. And that's where I think the benefit of having a third party come in, and we were able to say that. We were able to say, we've noticed that, you interrupt a lot, and that might be really shutting your team down, and you're not getting the full breadth of your team leaning in when you're constantly interrupting them. So that would be something that I think a consultant in that case is helpful. We have an easier time saying that because we're sort of outside the organization. But when teams start to build that trust with each other, certainly I think people have the courage to say those types of things, and positional power makes it hard.
Kate, you talk about translating strategy into an everyday leadership behavior. And I think a lot of organizations struggle here, right? Because they'll have like a retreat or a workshop or even a great strategy deck, and then Monday happens, right? So, like, what separates organizations that sustain alignment from those that kindly drift back to old habits or drift apart?
Yeah, I really love that. And then Monday happens. I'm going to borrow that. I think that's really nice. That's exactly what happens. Well, so two things. One, sponsors who are very committed to the journey, and by sponsors I mean the most senior leader. So in, the president or the CEO, and often in a sponsor team who we work with, that would be like a CHRO or head of HR. So if you have sponsors who are very committed to the journey, and emphasis on journey, this is unfortunately alignment work is not a one and done deal. It is literally an ongoing experience every single day indefinitely. So sponsors are committed. And then to emphasize the work that we do and to make a plug for Julie and her book, Make How Matter, when a leadership team has their team commitments or ways of working, those are synonymous for us, defined, that's where you see sustainable leadership alignment. So if you're taking the time as a leadership team to say, we are committed to bringing grit with grace. We are committed to assuming positive intent. We're committed to having the right people make the right decisions. We're committed to having an enterprise mindset. Those are examples of clients' team commitments. When you've taken the time to say, these are what we are committed to, and then you share them with the rest of your organization to say, please help hold us accountable to how we're going to lead together, that's where you get the sustainability. If it stays, as I was saying earlier, in that agreement space, like, we agree, we need a better ways of working, and you haven't done the work by having the conversations to define how you're going to lead together, I think you're going to not be as successful as you'd like to be.
I love that. It reminds me of like positive psychology that coincides with habit formation. So, read a book recently, Tiny Habits, which I'm sure many of you have either read or heard of before. But one of the strategies in helping you kind of stick with the habit or routine that you're trying to integrate with your life is to literally speak out loud, to name it into the universe. Be like, I'm the type of person that insert habit. And the more that you like say it out loud, the more that the positive psychology kind of washes over you and you like stick with it. So I think that's an amazing example, Kate, of just being able to name it and have others name it too.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about noticing and naming on the other end too. If those things that are getting in your way, you need to name them too and say them out loud, to your point. So yeah, I love that.
All right. Well, we have to talk about it because I can't have a conversation without talking about AI. And we just were fresh off the AI summit, the first ever AI summit, and Karrikins was a huge partner of that event. Julie rocked it on stage with her keynote, and Karrikins Group was all over the room, all over social media. It was just so awesome to partner with you and the team. But I'm curious, AI is obviously changing how we work, how we communicate, how we make decisions. It's changing everything. And from an alignment standpoint, where do you think leaders should be paying attention to right now with respect to AI?
Yeah, well, first of all, we loved CultureCon, so thank you so much for having us be such a big partner there, and looking forward to future CultureCons. For AI specifically, I think it again comes back to the individual leader. So, as a leadership team to move into alignment, you, the leader, needs to be using AI. You can't be delegating that to your teams or saying, well, some other department's going to be taking care of that. Like there's an opportunity for you to say, this is what I'm experimenting with. This is what I've learned. This is maybe where, I didn't get the results that I wanted. So then I tried this. So modeling the way and having a growth mindset as a leader for me is where you move into alignment with AI. We have a podcast as well called The Failure Gap, and I was listening to an interview with a man named Richard Kopelman from Aprio, and he was sharing that exactly. He's the CEO of that organization. He was saying, I have learned that if I treat AI like a new team member who doesn't know all of the things, and then I have to actually use more words to explain to them, it's one helping me show up better with my team members because I realize the words that I'm skipping, assuming that they know, and I'm experimenting and learning to use AI in a new way. So I think that that's where you move out of the failure gap is that you, the individual leader, uses AI and doesn't delegate that to other people.
Have you seen in your work that leaders are resistant to using AI as of now? Because I was surprised at the AI summit. I heard from people mainly in like maybe government agencies or higher ed, like highly regulated industries, that they were having trouble convincing leadership to kind of get on the AI train and start utilizing it. But I'm curious if that shows up in your work at all.
Yeah, we work with a lot of publicly traded but private companies, so like not government entities or higher education. So I'd say on that side, I have not noticed that. I've noticed that people are excited about it and experimenting and trying different things. I think to your point, there is always that compliance piece, and so organizations need to be really careful with their data and security. And I imagine they have teams working on that. But I've gotten the sense that most people, at least are trying. They're not just expecting somebody else to do it. I feel like the clients that we have are growth mindset kind of people, so that probably helps too.
Totally agree. I think now, especially after the AI summit, I think I was more bought into this, but just the business imperative behind getting used to these tools and figuring out, where's the strategy and how do we for fear of this sounding too like too unrigid, it's like how do we play? How do we play with this and get not be intimidated by it, but let's find a way to utilize these tools in a way that can cultivate connection and joy and creativity and kind of get buy-in through that aspect of just like increase creativity and productivity gains. And then we can figure out, the rest as it comes. Where I felt like maybe for some organizations, there's so much intimidation around making sure that they figure out the right security policies and regulatory environments and all the trickle down things. And the concern that came up in the conference was like, if that's preventing you from being able to get your hands on these tools, then potentially your business is at risk because your competitors are going to be using these tools and their teams are going to be, collaborating and thriving in a way that maybe you're not going to hit. So that was really interesting. I don't know if you had a similar takeaway, Kate.
Yeah, I was just thinking about Emily Maybe's presentation from Zapier, and she had said something about having AI do an audit of your time, and, like, that had never occurred to me. I was like, "Oh, that's a fantastic idea." So I took that kind of in the spirit of what you're saying, like, let's experiment, let's just play around, and to your point, not get bogged into, like, it has to be perfect and all these things need to line up, like, let's just be open-minded about it first. So, yeah, I that was a takeaway for me too.
for Zach and I know we kinda had this moment of like, "Oh, wow, we take a lot for granted just being a two-person company and being able to just, like, get our hands on these things and have fun and experiment," and, Zach has built some really impressive things for our business, and then being in a room with people where some of them were like, "We wanna do this, we just, like there's so much, let's just say, security measures that we have to make sure we comply with before we can feel safe enough to move forward." So, really interesting. Kate, I want to switch gears a little bit because your background is so interesting to us because, not only does it span coaching, but you have these like theater-based experiences and so much community work. And so I kind of want to integrate your work with like starting with oneself because this is something that's like near and dear to our hearts at CultureCon, which is like we believe that every individual has the power and influence to make work more meaningful for themselves and those that they work with. So to bring it back to you, I'm just curious like is there something that you believe about leadership today that maybe wasn't a thing 10 years ago, or maybe you didn't believe in it 10 years ago that now all of a sudden is like, oh, this is a big piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. Thanks for mentioning my background. And I have a passion and personal work around social justice. So that's where a lot of that has come from. I'm really grateful to get to partner with organizations who find very unique ways to talk about social justice in a way that is accessible. So similar to our work, I feel like the theater-based work gets people in a generative space that is different than going to a lecture or reading something online. So I think that hands-on piece is super important. For leadership specifically, I feel like I didn't real this sounds funny. I didn't realize how much work it takes to be a leader. I think it just looked to me like, oh, you're in lots of meetings and maybe you have a fancy title and you get to be part of the cool conversations and travel. And like I had this very hands-off experience with leaders in my life. And then having grown into a leadership role at Karrikins Group, it's less glamorous, honestly, than I thought it was going to be. And it's really takes a lot of intentionality every single day. I don't think that I realize the consistency that you need to show up with as a leader if you wanna have the impact you wanna have. Like, we had talk a lot about intentional optimism, and as a leader, like, sometimes I feel discouraged, and sometimes I feel skeptical, and sometimes I have great ideas that I don't know how to execute. Like, if I'm consistently saying I need to be forward-focused and pragmatic, and, how do I stay in that space regardless of how maybe I feel that day because of something that's happening in my personal life or I'm just overwhelmed by work, like, to just show up anyway and be reliable in that. From an energy perspective, it takes a lot of intentionality to have an enterprise perspective and see all of the different pieces and parts that are happening and not just be focused on my one piece takes, again, a lot of intentionality to have more conversations than you think you would need to have. I think I had that idea like, oh, a leader just shows up and says something and that's it. It's like, oh no, there were probably 15 conversations they had before this. They're going to have 15 more after this. They need to continue to repeat themselves to actually get their message across. So I didn't realize the level of communication that was required. And then the teamwork, obviously, we work with teams, and I personally love being on a team and working with teams, and that requires effort to get different personalities, different communication styles, all aligned, not to overuse that word too much, around a goal and a strategy, and then to hold each other accountable and have those conversations when maybe there's different perspectives on what holding somebody accountable looks like. So all of that was a very long answer, but like I just my eyes have been opened so much in the last 8 years working at Karrikins Group with clients, but then my own leadership journey is it's a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy.
And energy is the perfect word. Yeah, I've when I reflect on some of the best leaders that I've had the pleasure of working with, and even just my aspirations to be, the type of father and husband and friend that I want to be, like it all comes back to energy. And that just like you, that's like the biggest takeaway for me is like it shouldn't be a surprise that energy takes a lot of work, but it takes a lot of work. So it's like what are the things that I need to do to cultivate kind of that best energy for the Nick to show up, the Nick that I want to show up consistently. And it's, like we talked about before, what routines and habits should be a part of my everyday, what sort of relationships, and what sort of physical environments are going to give me these types of restorative energies so I can bring my best self forward. And it sounds so fun and like easy to like do that kind of stuff. It's so hard. It's so hard. And then I think about these leaders that I've worked with in the past, and it just, from the outside looking in, it seemed like they had it so dialed in. And now I'm just like in pure awe and admiration for how much work and how much dedication coincides with being an inspiring leader. So thank you for that, Kate.
Yeah, and also I think the communication piece is so huge. Like I think about some of the best leaders that I've worked under, worked with, and they're just amazing communicators. Like and to your point, Kate, there may have been 20 conversations that have gone on behind the scenes, but then when they relay that information, explaining whether it's a big or small decision, why we're doing this, and just having clear communication, being able to have Q&A and answer questions, and feel like you're talking to a human and not a robot leader type person, that's big too. But speaking of leaders, we always like to end by giving our guest an opportunity to give a shout out. So it could be a leader, it could be someone in your life that helped shape you on your leadership journey, but want to give you the opportunity to give a personal shout out to someone who's helped you get to where you are today.
Yes, I love that. Gratitude is one of my core values, so that speaks to my heart. I mean, I know this is going to be like, oh, of course, but really, Julie Williamson has been a huge mentor, leader, like someone who I am inspired by, who I aspire to be. She's very consistent. She's a fantastic communicator. She works really, really, really hard. She has her mind is just, really brilliant in that way. But I love what you said, Zach. Like, she's human too. Like, I feel like I have a friendship with her as well. And we've been fortunate to get to work together for a long time. So that helps as well. But we were part of a book club. So we do things socially too. But I really love Julie.
She's someone. So Zach and I, of course, had the pleasure of meeting Julie in person around a month ago. And right away, there is like this warmth about her. I don't know how else to phrase it, but like, there's so much joy, there's so much gratitude, and she was so eager to figure out how she could help Zach and I at the conference. 'Cause, she probably picked up on all of our anxious energies trying to make sure things were, and so she was coming to us, like, asking, "How can I help you?" And it's the perfect choice, Kate. She's such an amazing human.
Yep.
Yes,
Shout
I
out
agree.
Julie. She's amazing. And for the listeners, if you haven't checked out Julie's book, Make How Matter, I got one right here. All of the AI Summit attendees were able to receive a copy. It's a great read. It's quick, and there's so much good nuggets of gold in there. So definitely recommend checking out Make How Matter by Julie. Kate, thank you again so much for joining us today, sharing your perspective. It was such an amazing conversation, and really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much.
That's a wrap on this episode of the official CultureCon podcast.
If you got something out of it, share it with a friend, a teammate, or a fellow culture geek.
And don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode.
And if you want more ways to stay connected and inspired, check out our upcoming events page for a full listing of webinars, workshops, and conferences.
You'll find the link in the show notes, and we'd love to welcome you to a CultureCon event soon.
Until next time,